right. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Brandon Meisner with you. Also, Chuck Bittner, Devin Albertson, Justin Polizzi, Chris Ferguson, and Matt Witwicky. As you can see on the screen, we are all set to bring you a great show tonight. Number 20, Cal remains undefeated after beating number 24, IUP on the road. We'll talk about that tonight. And in another top 25 matchup, Augustana was able to get the monkey off its back in Mankato and came away with a strong performance and a huge win there. The first set of regional rankings will come out tomorrow, so we will take a very, very detailed look at that. We'll also answer your questions, and feel free to interact with us on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere else. But tonight we're going to start with Colorado Mesa, upset of Colorado School of Mines. And it was the first win for Mesa over a ranked opponent since 2016, which ironically was Colorado School of Mines when they won that one. And then also the Mavs were down 21-7 at one point in that game, and had a great comeback to win the game.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was even mentioned during the game towards the end by their announcing crew as kind of the biggest game that they'd had there in years. And you see right here, Karst Hunter, their starting quarterback from South Dakota State transfer. He's basically come on in and been a real playmaker for this squad. 6'4", 215 pounds, and making a great throw right here, in the corner of the end zone for a score. He got knocked around a fair amount in this game. Colorado Mines was very physical with him when they got the lead early. He took a few shots down the field, as you can see right here. He's a physical player, ran the ball 18 times also for 81 yards in this contest. Second half of the game, you saw Mesa get real kind of up in the face of Mines and get very physical with them defensively themselves, whether it was on the outsides or they also got to the quarterback 4 times. Right here, you see Hunter making another run. Once again, get taking some hits, but keeps getting positive yardage. Right here, he gets hit again as he goes ahead and completes a pass. So they got chunk plays in the passing game as he continued as a bruising runner. And then eventually they get themselves to the point where they're down just by a few points here. They get a swing pass to the tight end, gets on out, gets loose. And as you take a look, he's able to make a house call there on a 4th down play, 4th and 5, and they end up scoring, and that's the go-ahead score. And this is the last play of the game where they go ahead on 4th and goal and are able to keep the Orediggers out of the end zone. So huge win, and you can obviously see right there that the fans were going crazy in the background there. Just quite the win for Colorado Mesa, especially after Mines had just moved on up to be in 3rd overall in the country.
And Matt, with that, let's bring on a friend of yours, victorious coach Tremaine Jackson of Colorado Mesa, what we would consider a first-year coach there. Coach, thanks for joining us. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Hey, Coach, let me ask you, obviously you and I have known each other a little bit back from our days in Sioux Falls, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the game yesterday. You just saw the highlights that we ran. Your squad, held off a strong, Colorado Mines offense who averages over 400 yards a game. You guys kept them down to 242 for the day, and you hang ahead of goose egg in the second half. No points, only 49 yards allowed. Kind of what was the defensive mindset coming into the game, and what changes did you make at half to kind of really lock things down?
Well, we knew we had to stop their running back first and foremost, and they've got a great quarterback in our opinion. But their running back, the offense kind of went through him. He ran really tough. We had to tackle him and get him down to the ground, which to begin the game with, he kind of got loose on us for a couple of 8 to 10 yard gains. What we did at halftime was just say, okay, we're going to sell out to stopping the run. We're going to press them at wide receiver. We felt like we could run with them in the defensive backfield. So we pressed up and we pressured a little bit more and just kind of got after them. We felt like we could get after them up front on their O-line, and we liked the matchups with our defensive line. just kind of disappointed after watching the tape. We probably should have did that in the beginning a little faster, and we probably would have held them off a little bit and wouldn't have had to fight back from being down 21-7.
Easy to say afterwards, though, right? When the game's going on, things are going so fast, But we were just showing highlights of Karst Hunter. Obviously, a difference maker for you guys. He's been the RMAC Player of the Week a few different times already this season.
Mm-hmm.
Big kid, almost reminds me a little bit of Luke Papillion back in the days for Sioux Falls. Maybe a little bit beefier kid. Throws a real good ball as well. What can you tell us a little bit about the story of him arriving at Mesa in the first place after being at South Dakota State?
Yeah, so we initially recruited Avion Thomas, our tailback. He's a South Dakota State transfer as well. And Karst got in the portal, and Avion kind of let us know. Avion was coming here for the summer already. He told our offensive staff, and Coach Braley Brown got on the phone with Karst. We called some folks over at South Dakota State. And we realized real quick when we watched the tape that he was a good athlete, kind of like Luke being a lacrosse guy before. And so he was a big, strong kid that played receiver, running back, had ran down on kickoff, thought he was tough, but we knew he had the quarterback experience from Miller. So it was a no-brainer. We wanted a quarterback. Those guys did a really good job of recruiting him, and he got here, got in the car and came on down.
Yeah. I see his old high school coach from time to time, kind of chirping him up a little bit on Twitter. It's kind of fun to see. But let me ask: you guys got to the point early in the fourth quarter, 3rd and 10. Karst makes a kind of wheels out, makes a run for about 5 yards, takes a pretty big hit on his throwing shoulder, goes down right literally at your feet. I see him kind of rolling around on the ground and isn't sure how things are going to be. It's going to be 4th and 5, early fourth quarter. You had a little exchange with him verbally at that point. How did that go? Because it ended up being a historic play that followed for you guys.
Yeah, all I asked was, are you okay? He said he was okay, so I then said, let's go for it. If he was okay.
Was he assuming you guys were going for it, or was he thinking the punter was coming out?
I think he thought the punter was coming out because he was already on the sideline. And so we had already determined before the game we were going to be extremely aggressive because we had nothing to lose. Not often do you get the number 3 team to come to your place. I wish you guys could have saw the environment. It was a sellout crowd. It was as loud as I've ever heard it in the home games that I played there. And then people around here say that was the best crowd that they've seen. So it was the right atmosphere to take a chance, and I'm glad we did.
So on that play, you guys get to 4th and 5. You guys kind of do a little bit of a stack on the right side with the tight end and your H-back right behind the tackle. And you kind of have that tight end release. You guys tried to get to that tight end a little bit earlier, I think, in that series. Were you kind of seeing that maybe there was a point in time where you guys wanted to go ahead and get something in the flats there?
Yeah, well, we always try to get the ball to number 8 now. He's one of our better players, and I think our offensive staff does a good job of getting him his touches. At that moment, we were just trying to get a first down to keep the drive alive.
Gotcha.
And lo and behold, we dump it off for 5 yards. In my mind, I'm saying, good, we got the first down. Let's get the next play ready. And then we see this gigantic 6'6" arm stiff arm a kid in the head and continue to run. And so that was just kind of one of those things that worked out in our favor. But we were just trying to get the first down. And he's done that all year. He's made plays for us all year. And what a great story Dagan Ranks has.
Great. I made reference earlier to the fact that you and I have known each other for a few years. Back in 2014, I interviewed you for D2FOOTBALL.com as you had just taken over the defense at University of Sioux Falls. And I can still remember us going over and eating at Five Guys Burgers in Sioux Falls like it was the Last Supper. And then from there, you and I had occasional breakfasts at the Pancake House and stuff because, we similar interests and everything else. Let me ask, what are the eats like out there in Grand Junction?
We've got our fair share of local things that kind of emulate the Five Guys and emulate the Pancake House. We got a place called Puffer Bellies. I think it's a little bit better than the Pancake House. You might like it a little bit better.
Shots fired there. Boy,
yeah.
Okay.
And so they give you a big cinnamon roll. And I know you're a cinnamon roll type of guy.
Yeah, I'm a mark for that. You're right.
So no, we've got some traditional eats out here too. And so what I've gotten into now with is I'm a grill master in my spare
you're
time.
that guy now.
I try to be that guy a little bit.
Oh,
BA,
man.
I trade BA meat with BA. I make pulled pork and take it to his house, and we have a good feast on it. So
I think Chad Berger might be listening from Sioux Falls. He has a special rule that anything you cook, you have to post on Twitter, apparently.
Well, and we certainly do that. Chad owes me a taco too, so when you talk to him,
fair enough.
I'm afraid we might have lost Whit for the rest of the show.
Yeah, right.
Talking about food. So
Yeah.
let's turn it back to football. How are we able to turn over things? How are you able to have so much success so early on? Every coach approaches football a different way. Every coach sees football a different way. What were the things you had to do with your program to
we had to change
make them the way you wanted them?
Well, we had to change the culture when I walked in the door. We had a lot of success before. I think you guys know that. We had tied for the conference championship 2016. We went to the playoffs. That's actually where I first saw Mesa. When I was at Sioux Falls, they played Azusa Pacific. We were getting ready for Azusa in 16, and that was actually my first glimpse of Colorado Mesa. But when I got here, there was just so many things disconnected. And so we had to try to connect all the disconnects with the administration, with players, with the community. We just had to go to work. It was a roll up your sleeves type job. And so through COVID, through recruiting, it all worked out for us. We were able to play a couple of games last year, instill the culture, but still see what we had from a talent standpoint, and then be able to arrange our roster where a lot of people were they couldn't play. They couldn't do anything. We were in an area that allowed us to play. And so I always tell people COVID helped the Mesa Mavericks. We didn't want anybody to get sick at all, and I'm not saying that, but it allowed us to get our house in order behind the scenes without the pressures of trying to go win a championship in our first year. So
if I recall, you were really adamant about actually playing, where others were not. You were like, you wanted to play.
Yeah, our president at the time, he thought he played college football, and he's an athletics guy, and so he really pressed to play. Our vice president, who's now our current president, headed up our COVID team. So we felt like we could pull it off. And we had a lot of things that a lot of people didn't have with testing. And so we felt like we could play safely. And my thing was, if we can play safely, then we need to play, because I need to know what we have on this roster. And we didn't get spring ball. We didn't get any of that when I first got here. And so it was good for us. Those 3 games, it really helped us. And what I think the biggest accomplishment for us was we got to put in how we do things. Now, when our guys go through a game day, it's not the first time they've ever been through a game day. They know what that schedule looks like. Our coaching staff knows what that schedule looks like. And so we were able to be more mature, even though technically it's still our first year.
Did you're talking about the things that you had to change and going through the game day. We talked previously that we have a mutual friend in Adam Dorrell. How much do you take from him? Who are coaches that you've learned from?
Yeah, I learned a lot from AD. When I had the chance to go work for AD, I was with a good head coach in Jed Stugart. A lot of people don't know I went to Lindenwood for 8 days with Jed from Sioux Falls, and then I got the call from AD. And D2 football is where I always wanted to be. And so I felt like if I had a chance to go learn from the guy that had just won 3 out of the last 4 national championships, I probably needed to go do that. And so I learned a lot about how to scholarship people, how to put together your scholarshiping and things of that nature. I thought he was phenomenal at that, and just managing a roster. And then how you instill a culture. How does that – because when we got to ACU, we had to do the same thing we had to do here. And so a lot of that is what I took from him and how we came into Colorado Mesa.
That's one consideration. I think you'll back me up on this. That Division I coaches don't understand the many hats that Division II coaches have to wear. And certainly roster management and scholarships is one of them. It's very easy to do in Division I, here's
It's
your
all paid for.
scholarship. Yeah, exactly right. And choosing to give a kid a quarter, a half, whatever, it's a difficult decision, and probably makes or breaks a lot of programs.
Well, and it's not just choosing how much to give a kid or what to give a kid,
Yeah.
but it's managing the locker room when those kids start talking about what each other's getting.
Right.
How do you manage that, and how do you keep the focus on the team and leave the selfishness to the side? I thought AD was a master at that. I thought Jed did a great job at that as well. And so those two guys, I learned a lot from.
Speaking of scholarships, the RMAC has not been a conference that is traditionally fully funded. They're making efforts, and schools are heading in the right direction. Do you guys still have work to do in that regard?
We do. And that's why after yesterday's game, I basically told everybody what you just saw was fully funded versus fully cultured. We might not be fully funded, but our culture and what we were able to instill, I'll take over everybody's funds. And so that's why I thought we won yesterday, because of a culture over funds.
While we've got you on here, and I know Matt might have a follow-up, but you have Western Colorado coming up this week, a very good opponent. Tell us a little something about them.
And they play great defense. They play great offense. They're really sound on special teams. You cut the tape on. They look well coached. They got a really big running back. I know Witt likes those big backs. They got a really big guy, and we got our work cut out for us. This is our true rival game. The Western and Mesa rivalry goes back well before I was born, when they were winning conference championships for decades in a row. And so got to go to Gunnison for the first time in my career. And so it should be a good one, but definitely we've got our work cut out for us.
Very good.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you making the time for us. And I think that we're all probably in agreement that we're going to see you guys not only ranked in the top 25, but your name should also appear in the regional rankings that are upcoming tomorrow afternoon. So best of luck the rest of the way, and really appreciate you coming on and visiting with us.
Thank you guys for having me. Maybe now I can get a follow back from D2 Football and Chuck. Wherever Chuck is, tell Chuck follow me back, man. Stop doing me like that.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Have a good one.
I appreciate y'all.
All right. Again, that was Tremaine Jackson, the head coach at Colorado Mesa, and obviously a friend of Matt Witwicky. Let's bring our whole crew on. That was not the only game that was an upset or a tremendous game this week. I guess you really wouldn't consider an upset. We went west. Let's go back east, Chuck. In the PSAC, Cal U comes from behind to beat IUP 38-34. We had Cal ranked number 20. IUP was number 24. It's for the first time since 2012. The road team won the Coal Bowl. Now, Cal U is now in the driver's seat in the PSAC West, but they still have Slippery Rock upcoming. We had Cal ranked 20, as I said. Now with this win over IUP, does it change your opinion of where they should be ranked?
It definitely did. So first of all, sorry, I got thrown off there for a second. I jumped over to Twitter and followed Coach Jackson. So
okay,
already got that taken care of.
No, we're gonna make fun of you about that from now on. But anyway, keep going.
I had been ranking Cal for a couple of weeks in my top 25, but I had them in the second half of that top 25 list. And the reason was just that we hadn't really seen a show me game from Cal yet. They had done everything that they could with the schedule that they had. They had 3 shutouts, one of the top defenses in all of D2. But when I looked at, who they had played, I don't think there's a team in our top 25 that would not have been 6-0 against that schedule. And there's nothing they can do about that, but it's just reality. But this game was definitely something that gave me a whole different perspective on who California is. Saw excellent quarterback play, some receivers that made phenomenal catches all day. We're seeing a few of them on the replay right now. They have some really good size on defense. But most importantly, this game was all about resolve. I mean, California had to overcome a lot of adversity to win this football game. They had some really bad breaks, really just devastating turn of events at the end of the half. They had a defensive player that got called for targeting in the end zone on a play where California intercepted the football. And by rule, targeting in the end zone actually results in a safety, much like holding on the offensive team would result in a safety. So the targeting call negates a turnover. It puts 2 points on the board for IUP, and it gives IUP a bonus possession. And IUP actually turned that into a touchdown right before the half. So you get 9 points out of that. They come out of the locker room for the second half. Officials announce that the targeting call has been overturned on video replay, which is a really interesting follow-up to a conversation we had just last week about replay. They actually did have some good views of that, and they overturned it. So the player can come back into the game, but the officials are basically admitting it was not a good call.
Right.
And that player can come back in, but there's nothing you can do about the points that got awarded for the safe. There's nothing you can do about the possession that IUP got. Those are just the type of events that could really just doom the rest of the game for a team. So they had to overcome that, had a couple of turnovers to overcome. Late in the game, they're trying to make a comeback. Their starting quarterback actually has to go out with an injury. The backup comes in and just throws 2 strikes to get the ball down the field for a touchdown pass. And then late in the game, they end up scoring twice in the last 2 minutes. They block a punt in the last minute of the game, get downfield and score. So just a lot of adversity to overcome against a really good football team on the road, their house, their environment. And as you mentioned, Brandon, in a game where the road team has not had much success in the last couple of years. So very, very impressive win. If they lose that game, it's hard to tell where they might have ended up in the regional rankings. Possibly, outside of the top 7, top 8, that would be kind of in that playoff team picture. With this win, they're going to be right up there. I don't think they go to number 1, even with the undefeated record, just because the weighted OWP is still going to be pretty low. But a result that they really, really had to get, and a great win for them.
All right. Well, let's move on, men, and let's head north now. Augustana, as we said, got the monkey off its back and beat Minnesota State, a score of 45-23. Augustana dominated, and I think more than that score would indicate. Matt, you watched it. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, 45-35, but right.
45-35, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Augie got out to a 14-0 lead right away. 2 big drives scoring. They were taking some big shots over the top, and their line protected Kyle Sadler fantastic all day long. He's gotten sacked 1 time all season. Threw for over 400 yards in this game and 5 scores. Right there, Luke Fritsch making a nice interception, pulls the ball away. And then you see Jared Epperson here out of Wildcat taking the corner. Augie was able to kind of do what they wanted offensively. Mankato was kind of playing chase throughout the day, and really impressive win for Augustana right there. I mean, that's the kind of win that they've needed for years over Mankato to kind of take that next step. And I think it's symbolic of what we've been saying, or I've been at least hinting at all year, which is I think that there's a real good chance that they're the best team in the Northern Sun. And I think that that probably played true and rung true yesterday.
Right, guys, that's going to be it for really individual games that we focus on. I'd like to throw a bunch together. Let's talk about another top 25 upset now. Delta State, I guess you could call this an upset, beat West Alabama 35-30. Justin, you saw the game. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts and where these 2 teams are headed.
Well, I thought it was a good win for Delta State. I think they're better than the record shows. They started the season 2-0, lost 5 in a row on the road at West Alabama this week. Pulled off, I guess you'd call it an upset of an unranked first 15, right. 35-30. If you watch the game, I thought it was a little bit of a sloppy game, but West Alabama had the ball. As time expired, they had 3 on-time downs and opportunities to score a touchdown to win it, and they couldn't execute. They couldn't find the end zone. So I can't ever tell you I've seen 3 on-time downs in one game in one sequence of events, but it was, it was bang, 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 and they just couldn't find the end zone when it counted. But it was a good win by Delta State. Shegog did not play again this week, so it was the the freshman Cole that got the start, played pretty well for Delta State. I think that ball club's better than the record shows right now. And I think this was a big win for them to get some momentum rolling here towards the end of the season.
All right, let's move on to the CIAA, Chris. Bowie State. Last week in the comments, somebody said they thought that Union could hang with Bowie, but 27-7 win by the Bulldogs says otherwise.
Yeah, every year it's like Virginia Union is going to challenge Bowie State, and every year we end up disappointed. And unfortunately for Virginia Union, the starting quarterback was still on the sideline, still hurt, I think. And Bowie has kind of transformed itself. Early in the season, they were kind of passing the ball to make things work, like the Saginaw Valley game. They had like 1 rushing yard. Well, this past Saturday, like they had like a ton of rushing yards. I mean, well over 200 yards rushing, and it's the second straight week that they've been able to do that. So, I mean, you kind of see flashbacks to what like Jerome Johnson's been able to do. Khalil Wilkins has really got going on the ground as well. And so, unfortunately, for the rest of the conference, I think time's kind of running out to catch them if they want to get into the championship game.
So a team heading in the opposite direction of Bowie State is Chowan. Started the season 5-0. They lost yesterday to Elizabeth City 30-28. Kind of a shocking loss, in my opinion. Certainly headed in the wrong direction, as we said.
Yeah, Chowan had 500 yards of offense and lost his game. I mean, and that tells you a lot about kind of the way that they've been playing. I think a bit fast and loose at times. Had over 100 yards of penalties. They kept having to bail themselves out on 3rd and 20 type deals just because of the way that they kept getting penalties. And really, this game came down to really 1 or 2 plays. There was special teams a mishap for Chowan that Elizabeth City recovered in the end zone. And then in the early 4th quarter, they had the opportunity to at least get a first down in Elizabeth City's within the 5-yard line for them, and they couldn't convert. And so I think those two alone, somebody had posted that I think Bowie State took the soul out of Chowan after that game. And I think that's kind of happened when you have 3 straight losses like this. It's pretty hard to watch, and it's almost hard to see if they're even favored against a surging Virginia State team this upcoming week.
All right. Some other top 25 teams, kind of bounce back teams after tough games, struggled a little bit. Grand Valley, 28-24 win over Northern Michigan, maybe a little closer at the end, but really not the kind of outcome that you expected.
Certainly not what I was looking for as a bounce back game. I'm trying not to read too much into it. We know that Ferris State coach Tony Neese talked last week about how difficult those road trips to the Upper Peninsula can be. That's a huge challenge to get on the bus and head all the way up there. But you certainly wanted to see a better outcome. I necessarily think Grand Valley played poorly. They really let an underdog hang around too long. And typically when that happens, turnovers are involved. And there was a really big one in this game right before the half. Grand Valley turned the ball over, and Northern Michigan's able to get down and punch it into the end zone on the last play of the half. And it's a 1-point game at the half when it should have been at least a full score game. And then the rest of the way, they just, they had opportunities to pull away and just couldn't really do it. And then they let Northern Michigan go on a long scoring drive in the last couple minutes and get 8 points out of that drive. And then you up sweating it out through onside kick and then trying to run out the clock. So anytime you can go on the road and get a win in conference, coaches will take that every time. But you certainly wanted to see something a little bit better from Grand Valley in that.
Right.
And I believe that's back-to-back weeks for Grand Valley where they turned the ball over late in the first half and the other team scored for a momentum swing there going into halftime too.
Oh, was there one last week? I didn't really remember that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was called a turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point, Devin. And this time they weren't right on the doorstep. I think it was about midfield, but they turned the ball over. It results in points for the other team, and it just really changed the outlook of the rest of the game.
Absolutely.
Right. Shepherd, number 11, gets by Westchester 42-38. Chuck, you said that at least you indicated to me that the score, the closeness of the score, at least, does not surprise you.
No, not really. I mean, Westchester's not a bad football team, and they've had some success against Shepherd. They know how to prepare for them, and also Westchester still had a lot to play for in this football game. They're out of the race for the PSAC East, but they still had an outside shot at possibly getting to the playoffs, especially if you get a win at Shepherd. You're still very much in the picture. So they had a lot to play for, and they have a good football team. And Shepherd didn't play poorly, just probably not quite as successful as they're used to. Tyson Bajan had a good day, not the numbers that we typically see, but he had a good day. The third quarter was crazy. There were 6 possessions and 6 touchdowns in the third quarter. So things just really got crazy, but then Shepherd kind of settled down and they finished in the fourth quarter. So, I don't think it's anything to be too alarmed about that they didn't have a great day. Again, when you beat a team in conference as good as Westchester,
that's just, I think Justin will back me up on this. Football's not a video game. If your overall on a video game is 92, the players expect the team to be 92 every week, but you have a different team 11 or 16 or whatever times a year. It's a different team every week.
Yeah. Now the one that I thought, did surprise me a little bit, Slippery Rock really struggled at Mercyhurst, and that was a little eye-opening. They needed to bounce back and play well after the loss to IUP. Really just did not play well at all. They fumbled 6 times in that game. The conditions were not ideal. It was a little chilly. It was rainy. Mercyhurst is an inspired football team. They're trying to get a win for Marty Schetzel. It would have been a big win. It's Marty's last year at Mercyhurst, and he's been there for a long time. So that was an inspired football team, but you can't turn the ball over 6 times against an underdog like that. They were really, really lucky that they got out of that and didn't lose that game.
Right, and in the GAC, Henderson State, a 3-point victory over Arkansas Tech, 41-38. Tech hasn't been very good this year, so that outcome was surprising to me. Yeah,
I think it kind of caught all of us a little bit. We were talking about some of this stuff in pre-production, and when you look at it, you would expect if that's a top 25 team that they're probably going to handle them pretty easily in that game. Yeah.
But Tech's been able to score some points too. I was watching the Southeastern Oklahoma and Oklahoma Baptist game, and I went to look at Oklahoma Baptist's schedule and saw where they had their losses, and they lost to Tech as well. And I think the score was in the 30s. So Tech's going to get their points, it seems like, and for Henderson to have to get over that by just 3 points kind of raises some question marks about the defense.
I agree.
I was watching that game and just kind of watching, and every time Henderson would score, and okay, they're going to take control of this game, and Tech would just come right back on the field and just score right back with them. And I kind of thought Tech's score was under a minute, like under 10 seconds to go in that game, and they went for the 1 instead of the 2. And I almost think some of those times you're the underdog in a game like that, and it's homecoming, right. You're playing really well, and you have a really good offense like that. Maybe trust them to go for the win in that situation instead of playing for overtime and then losing by 3. That was an interesting decision. But it was a really fun game to watch too. I was kind of watching the MIAA games and having on my phone. Okay, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on this for regional rankings and Super Region 3 because if Henderson loses that game, it's huge for the MIAA. So I was just kind of keeping an eye on that game as well. So Tech almost did it. I saw Oklahoma Baptist did do it in that later game versus Southeast Oklahoma to help the MIAA out a little bit. But craziness in the GAC this past weekend.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We're also going to focus on the playoffs, how they're selected, and who might be in the regional rankings. We'll be right back, and we'll discuss that right after this. And we wanted to take a minute to thank everyone that has directly supported the site. These folks have made this video possible as well as to help us survive and thrive. D2Football.com might be free, but it isn't cheap. If you like this video and like to see us produce more, or simply want to help support our efforts to promote our great game, please consider joining them. You can visit d2football.com/support. There are options for monthly support as well as one-time considerations. There is a link in the description. Any way you can help is appreciated. Thank you in advance. All right. Well, here's the deal, guys. Tomorrow, the first regional rankings will come out. Our friend Inkblot on the message board has predicted what he believes they will be. He's not entirely as confident as He has been in the past, but we will see. But before we do that, Matt thought it would be a good idea, and I agree with Matt, if we kind of went over everything involved. So get your notebooks out, start taking some notes, and you'll understand the process a little bit better. All right, so the first thing I'm going to bring up is the criteria. If you see those, there is a required selection criteria and then a set of secondary criteria. And Matt, would you go through those and explain if the text is big enough for you to read anyway?
Yeah, it's just right. Yeah, it's perfect for me, actually. I appreciate that, Brandon.
Good.
The top two, there's, of course, the in-region winning percentage. And the NCAA is going to take the country and divide it into 4 super regions. And with that in mind, they're going to try and choose 7 squads from each super region to make up a total of 28 teams making the playoffs. So with that in mind, the in-region winning percentage is something that the NCAA wants to have a good idea of how teams are doing in their region. Then you also have Division II winning percentage as a whole, fairly self-explanatory. Then the Division II strength of schedule, which is primarily going to be the winning percentage of the teams that you've been playing. But there's also a third of that component, which is how are those teams, oppositions winning percentages as well. So that's the third component, and a very big one. And then you also had Division II head-to-head competition, if there has been, along with the results from common opponents, which is, once again, if there has been. With a fair amount of these conferences playing kind of their own little silo conference schedules, some of those, that 4th and 5th point may not happen with other teams that they're tied with in different conferences. But then there's the secondary criteria, which is basically over and above that. If all things look about the same with regard to a team's resume, then you're looking at things like D2 results versus teams with a winning record. Performance indicator, which is a new measure this year, that's basically gives you a certain amount of points for the more quality of wins that you have and the opponents you played. And then also there's the results versus ranked D2 opponents. And those are, once again, additional criteria. The top ones, the 5 that you have listed there, are truly the ones that they're basing their decisions off of. And then the additional 3 at the bottom are kind of as needed.
All right. So
I think it's really important to just reference a couple things. And thanks for that, Whit. That was great. But I think it's important to talk about a couple things that are not part of that criteria.
Yes.
Such as conference championships don't matter. If you win your conference championship, that's always job number 1 for most teams, but it actually is not part of the selection criteria. So that doesn't really matter. And when we talk about strength of schedule, weighted OWP, what's really important there is Division II competition. So as much as we love things like West Florida beating McNeese State, we actually talked about this earlier in the year on this show, it doesn't really help them in the regional rankings. And when you see records referenced in regional rankings, typically it's referencing your Division II record. And teams must play a minimum of 8 Division II teams just to be eligible. You have to play 10 opponents overall, and you have to play 8 Division II opponents. And somebody just commented, polls don't matter. So our poll, as much as we put into it, as much as we like it, our poll doesn't factor into it at all. The AFCA poll doesn't factor into it at all.
Correct. They matter, but they're not included in the criteria.
Ours matters a lot, but it's not part of
to us.
Exactly. So with that in mind,
and I believe the performance indicator, that's something from kind of basketball used a lot in the basketball criteria, and they've started to use that in football now.
Yeah, other sports as well. Yeah, soccer, volleyball.
Yeah. My initial thoughts on it were that I like it a lot because it really breaks things down. And were there 39 different levels of points, or was it 32?
I think it was like 39. I've seen, the scale that they have, and we can maybe, do a quick shot of that next week after we've got this thing rolling. But essentially what it is in volleyball, they have one, kind of scale where there's like 20 measures. Let's say soccer's got like 14. So for whatever reason, there are differing scales with this. But it basically is rewarding you for your better wins and things of that sort. And I think it's just one more thing to be able to have in the toolbox if you're the NCAA to try and differentiate between one team and the next if all things look equal.
All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and let's look at the top 10 in each region before we see how Inkblot projects that they will play out. So,
and these are in order 1 to 10, top to bottom, correct, Brandon?
Yes, that is correct. So in Super Region 1, it's Kutztown, Shepherd, Bentley, Notre Dame. California, IUP, New Haven, Slippery Rock, Stonehill, and Shippensburg. Super Region 2, Valdosta State, Bowie State, Albany State, West Georgia, West Florida, Wingate, Mars Hill, Newberry, West Alabama, and Fayetteville State. Super Region 3 is Ferris State, Harding, Lindenwood, Grand Valley, Northwest Missouri, Nebraska Kearney, Henderson State, Ouachita Baptist is what that should say, Washburn, and Pittsburgh State. And then Augustana, Colorado Mines, Central Washington, Midwestern State, Angelo State, Bemidji State, Wayne State, Duluth, Minnesota Duluth, Colorado Mesa, and Western Colorado. So that is what he has as the top 10 in each super region. Now, that is not necessarily how they will end up. So, Whit, do you think we should go ahead and look at the projections then that he had?
Well, let's come back to that for 1 second if you can, Brandon.
Okay. Do you want me to pull that back up?
Yeah, if you could. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Keep in mind, folks, what we're looking at the moment is we're looking at 10 teams listed. The top 7 are going to be the ones who make the playoffs in any one of these super regions. And we're going to mention this weekly, but this is a snapshot in time. So, in other words, a week from now, your team could end up getting passed up by another team who just had a really quality win. So, in other words, this isn't like a poll where you just assume that no one jumps you as long as you're winning.
Whit, I think the big thing to emphasize there is that the weighted opponent winning percentage will change from week to week, and I do not believe that it forecasts your future opponents. So when the rankings come out tomorrow, It's not yet looking at California and Slippery Rock playing in 2 weeks. It's not looking at New Haven and Bentley playing in 2 weeks. It's only up to that point in time. So it's not yet factoring in games that haven't been played. So that strength of schedule, which is calculated based on opponent winning percentage, it's going to change a lot, and it can cause movement in these rankings quite a bit.
Well, I think a good look at that, Chuck, is Lindenwood right now at 3 in Super Region 3. They play William Jewell, who's winless this year, coming up.
Right.
So immediately their strength of schedule is going to take a hit. I mean, they may even fall out of that 3 spot that we're projecting them to be in, even with a win, just because of the fact that their strength of schedule is going to go down.
Right. I know.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in that Super Region 3, you have Northwest playing Kearney this week, and you have Henderson playing Ouachita later in the year. So there's 2 huge games there just coming up. Next couple weeks, we could really change strength of schedule in just Super Region 3.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And I think, Inkblot said in his comments on the message board, he doesn't feel quite so confident yet. And I don't either. And the reason is we don't quite know how this committee is going to look at things like your overall D2 winning percentage versus strength of schedule. Which one might they value more right now? So somebody asked about California at number 5. Based on the strength of schedule, number 5 might be where they fall. Now, the committee also might look at it and say, Bentley and Cal are 7-0, perfect winning percentage in D2. They're 1-2. That could happen. I don't think that's likely to happen, but until we kind of see the first release of these rankings and sort of see what the committee is thinking, we don't quite know. It's guesswork every week that we do this, but it's really guesswork until we kind of see where that's going to go.
Yeah, I would say that same logic applies in Super Region 2. I mean, you got several 2-loss teams ahead of Fayetteville State that has 1 loss. And I think when you're looking at things like strength of schedule, that's certainly going to kick in to even though they got 1 loss. So it'll be really interesting to see how all that puts together. Super Region 2 also, you got a number of Gulf South teams in there that have yet to play each other. Right. West Georgia, Valdosta have to play this week, West Florida, West Alabama next week, and then the final week of the regular season, you got Delta and West Georgia and Valdosta and West Florida. So there's certainly a lot of movement that could certainly happen in all of here. And I was having a conversation earlier. What happens if, Inkblot has Bowie State number 2 and Valdosta happens to lose? I mean, do you move Valdosta out of the 1 spot? Or do you keep them there? I mean, with the Bowie State looming right behind them, that's undefeated in Division II play, and if they win their entire schedule and get to boost from Fayetteville State, that'll be a 1 loss at that point.
Well,
So
let me interrupt, Chris, because I think the question is maybe a flaw in the way we all think about this. Okay, because you're talking about moving them up, moving them down, but in reality, every week starts with nobody.
Right.
With no ranking.
Right.
So it could be possible that even if Valdosta were to lose, Bowie continues to win, that Valdosta would stay in the number 1 spot. It's also theoretically possible that Valdosta could, and that probably is theoretically possible, but not realistic, that Valdosta continued to win. Bowie continues to work on their strength of schedule and theoretically surpasses Valdosta. That could theoretically happen as well. It won't likely, but that could theoretically happen too. But I think the problem is not the problem, but the difficulty we as humans is we remember what happened last week and where they were ranked last week, and it doesn't really apply to this week because it is a new set of criteria, a new set of everything over and over each week.
Yeah, how's your
you said that,
resume look now? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Inkblock, you put a comment up there with him saying Lindenwood, even with 1 loss, they could get surpassed by the GAC and the MIAA teams even if they keep winning, just because their strength of schedule and kind of the perception there could definitely do that. So just one thing they keep it's always a snapshot of your current resume and not a predictor of what's going forward with it. So especially these first couple of weeks, just kind of get everybody to gauge where they're at in the region, not a prediction of where they're going to be.
Right. And I think we've seen examples of what the comment you just put up about, theoretically if Valdosta loses that they could still stay number 1. We've seen that happen many times over the years in these rankings. And I think you made an excellent point there, Brandon. We've probably all had enough interaction with committee members to know that typically the process is every time they do this, they're starting with a whole new top 10 every week that they do it. They're not just looking at, well, here's the top 10 that we had last week. This team lost. Where do we move them? They're just going in with the intent of creating a new top 10 every week that they do this.
Absolutely.
Brandon, can you put up the graphic one last time, if you would?
Which one, Matt? The criteria or the top 10?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the top 10 in each. Because yes. I think maybe the most interesting team on the board is the third slot in Super Region 4, Central Washington. And the reason I say that is because they're playing just a real weird schedule because of the fact that the GNAC of old is basically you're playing Western Oregon twice, you're playing Simon Fraser twice. Those schools have 3 wins between them. Then you have they played at Eastern New Mexico, who's got 3 wins, but at the same time they have beaten Midwest State in Texas, and they're a team that's 5-2 and 5-1 and actually in D2 competition. They lost to Angelo State, so they've got only 1 loss. Central Washington does, but it's really hard to assess how good they are because they're playing a pretty weak schedule otherwise, but they have a signature win over a team that's probably going to be in the playoffs. So it's really hard. I understand, like when Inkbot's looking at this saying they're probably the swing team because, the committee might look at them and say, hey, you look great. Or they may say you look like you're in the 5 spot. So I think that's the hardest one to figure in this whole group.
I took his comments out of order. He says that's the one that he's most looking forward to seeing where they end up.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and let's see how he has them ranked and how, if the playoffs were to start next week, things would theoretically go. As we see, we know 1 through 7 in each category, and we haven't even addressed earned access. But let's go ahead and look at Super Region 1. It would involve Kutztown getting the bye, Shepherd hosting New Haven, Bentley hosting IUP, and Wingate which is a Super Region 2 team, sliding up to Super Region 1 and playing Notre Dame.
Now, Brandon, why would they be moving? Can we explain that to the viewer?
Well, unfortunately, Inkblot would be the best one to explain it. But ultimately, it comes down to this: savings of travel. And it could even be a second round savings. So it might not save, for instance, it might save one flight in the first round, or they might have a team go on a flight in the first round because they know in the second round it would save 2 flights. And I was told, and I don't know what the numbers are, that a lot of these charter flights end up costing over $100,000 each. Well, this is the Deuce. This is not, this is not the FBS. This is not Power 5. So those costs are closely monitored, and that's a big factor in this in these teams changing potential regions. If you finish essentially 5, 6, or 7 in a region, you could theoretically be shipped out to another region if it does save on travel. So
if you're a non-host team, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you're hosting, you're good. If you're not hosting, you could wind up in another super region. So theoretically, Wingate could win Super Region 1 and play Mars Hill, who's in Super Region 2, we'll get to that, in the championship game under this setup. So it no longer prevents 2 teams from the same conference playing in the championship. Having said that, let's move to Super Region 2. Valdosta State gets the bye right now. Bowie will host Mars Hill. Albany State will host West Florida. And West Georgia will host Henderson State, who moves from Super Region 4 to Super Region 2. So again, there must be some savings there.
Brandon, let me stop you for one moment.
Yeah.
Just viewing West Florida at Albany State, for those who've been in tune with Albany State, they're the team who probably limited Valdosta the most offensively, who looks like a complete juggernaut.
Right.
The idea that Albany State would be putting their defense up against West Florida, who's a very strong offensive team, that would be a fascinating matchup if this were to somehow hold.
It would be. What was it, 20-3? Was that the score of that game, if I remember right?
21-3. Yeah.
21-3. Okay. I knew it was very close. So
Albany State has three shutouts, and I think 2 or 3 other games where they allowed 6 or less. So they're a legit defense.
Hey, Brandon, I didn't get a chance to mention this.
Yeah,
my computer was acting up a little bit, but when we talk about travel, right? I mean, it's a 600-mile radius. So that's the other thing to keep in mind in all of that. Like West Florida and Pensacola and Albany, Georgia, are only 3 hours or so driving.
Right. Well, ultimately, they don't care about the distance as long as it's under 600. So whether it's an hour or 599, all they care. And there's an in-house system that they use to determine that. And there are public links to it. You can figure out what they consider to be the distance between 2 places. But yes, that would not be a bad one at all. Not a bad drive.
And the other goal is to avoid in-conference matchups in the first round, at least, right?
Correct. Yeah,
or at least rematches. Yeah.
Is that what they said? Rematches?
I think it's rematches. But that's a good point, Chris. That's secondary to the overall objective of reducing flights, but that is part of their published mission as well, is to try to minimize those rematches, or where possible, conference rematches.
Chris, does your map in the background calculate distance at all?
I have a calculator for that.
All right, let's go ahead and bring that back up and look at Super Region 3. Ferris State would be the host team, or the bye, in the first round. Harding would host Northwest Missouri. Lindenwood would host Nebraska Kearney. Grand Valley would host California, Cal U. So they would slide from Super Region 1 to Super Region 3. That would be an interesting.
That would be awesome. Wouldn't that be fascinating? So, again, just to apply some historical perspective, in the past, that's a matchup that would not have been able to happen until we got to at least the semifinals, because they're in 2 different regions. So, this has some very specific goals in mind for cost savings, but it could also result in some pretty awesome matchups that we otherwise would not see. That would certainly be fascinating.
Chuck, I don't know if Cal would
Yeah,
use the word awesome if they saw that pairing, but I'm with you.
Yeah, when you get into playoffs, man, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no hiding from anybody, so you're either in or you're out.
Well, I think
matchups you have Northwest and Harding that has history in the playoffs, and then Kearney and Lindenwood, the former MIAA team, be three really interesting first round matchups in Super Region 3 if it's like that is the current setup as well.
Devin, we clearly have a different opinion of what's interesting because I am tired of the Harding Northwest game. Ship one of them to a different region. Let's see something else. I am not about that at all. So let's go ahead and look at.
I enjoy watching Northwest shut down the triple option. So I enjoy watching Northwest just shut down the veer and the triple option a little bit there. So I find that enjoyable. I know other people won't, but I enjoyed that watching Rich Wright work his magic there against triple options.
Well, last time Harding shut down the Northwest too.
That's fair.
They're one play away from this.
I just want to mention how in the past it's been like where some conferences have tried to avoid other conferences, and that isn't happening with this new arrangement now.
Right.
So I think that's the other historical perspective here that
who are you tiptoeing up to on that comment, Kafer?
I'm just saying, PSAC folks, they don't want to play the GLIAC or. I
got Armo on line 2 right now. By the way.
The GAC. They don't want to play the Gulf South. That's the way I see it, and unfortunately, this doesn't avoid that anymore.
The comment section now just became like a slot machine where ding, 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 ding. Let's go ahead and bring that.
You're welcome.
We're giving Armo your cell phone number right now as we speak.
Okay, looking at Super Region 4, guys. Augustana would be the host team. They would get a bye, Colorado Mines would host Wayne State, Nebraska. Central Washington, as Matt talked about, as an interesting team, would host Bemidji State. Midwestern State would host Angelo State. And that would be Super Region 4. So they don't have anybody. Super Region 4 would stay basically Super Region 4. And Matt, as we were talking earlier in the day, it's likely going to stay that way because of the geography of SR4.
Yeah, the first thing I didn't even notice this before, Brandon, that conference matchup with Angelo and Midwestern. So that's I got to be honest with you, that's not real exciting to me.
Agreed.
But I would, but it kind of speaks to those teams having a little bit of separation from the team that's sixth. Is kind of what it speaks to right there. But that could tighten up certainly in the coming weeks. But yeah, I mean the problem with Super Region 4 is it's hard for them to get involved too much with this cross bracket thing because of the fact that you have, for example, the entire RMAC who no one else is going to be able to be within driving distance of. Right. So it kind of limits that conversation, especially Central Washington also. I mean, they're obviously without a doubt in that same boat. So I think there's a greater likelihood that we're going to see teams between Super Region 2 and 3 go ahead and have a little bit of intermingling, and then maybe Super Regions 1 and 3. But I think there's a real chance that you may not see anybody affected with 4 unless you end up seeing like a Wayne State going and traveling to a Northwest Missouri State or something like that, which is still or within the realm.
Or theoretically, maybe one of the Northern Lone Star teams or an Eastern Lone Star team going over to the Gulf South, maybe. That might be. But, RMAC and any part of the Northern Sun, not in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, probably is going to avoid a move, or Wayne, Nebraska. You're probably right on that. So
the other issue with Super Region 4 is that Central Washington's actually already played Angelo and Midwestern.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of flexibility either in that region.
Yeah, it's the only super. Maybe off the top of my head, it's the only super region I believe that doesn't have an undefeated team. You've got 4 undefeated teams across the country, and 2 of them in Super Region 1, and then you don't have any in Super Region 4. So it's where 2 losses, maybe even 3 losses, you might still be able to find a way to get in.
Right. So,
Yep.
all right, guys.
And
Well,
the prospect of
it's not great.
the prospect of moving teams around into different regions, I think, is pretty interesting. But do just want to reemphasize that the selection process itself is still regionalized. So, we can look at, Wingate maybe playing in the SR1 bracket, or, New Haven playing in the SR2 bracket, something like that. Theoretically, those things can happen. But the selection process itself, when we start just looking at who's in and who's out, that is still completely siloed within its regions.
Right. They're picking the best 7 in each super region. Then after that point, they give a look at how things would break down from a travel standpoint. Exactly, Chuck.
Right.
well, I am all for mixing the regions up. In fact, if they were to send all, I know it never happened. If they were to send all 5, 6, 7s into a different region, I would be all for that, because that would be, in my opinion, a heck of a lot of fun to see new things. Unlike Devin, I don't like to see the same thing over and over and over, and we prefer some new matchups. So, all right.
Well, that Western Colorado Mesa game is going to be huge. Because that's potentially a team. The winner could certainly move up and make a case to break into that Super Region 4 top 7. So that's something else to consider, as we're kind of dissecting that.
Well, it's also important. I'm going to bring up this slide to point out that it'll also be good for both teams in terms of strength of schedule.
Right.
Because you see, they both have great records, but they're below what 1, 2, 3, 4. Both teams are below 4 teams with 2 losses. So that's largely the factor in their poor ranking. I guess being in the top 10 isn't a poor ranking, but you understand nonetheless. So, is there anything else we need to add about the regional rankings, guys, or did you think we covered it?
Well, they come out tomorrow afternoon about 3-4 p.m. or so, if I recall correctly.
It's always late the first time.
They'll also have a worksheet at the very bottom of the NCAA page that kind of shows their work a little bit in terms of the numbers, the raw numbers that are behind this. And at that point, I think we can further figure out a little bit exactly how they're arriving at things, because we don't have the exact numbers in front of us, literally, with the data. But Inkblot's done a really good job, whether it's in last few years, and to the point where Brandon, you and I have kind of joked around where we've had someone from the NCAA run into us, down in Texas, and even inquire about hey, who's this guy? He's right on top of it. So kudos to you, Inkblot.
Yeah, who's the Stephen Hawking that's figuring this stuff out? I mean, that's exactly what they're asking. So,
they assumed it was me all along, of course. I mean, why wouldn't they?
They did not assume it was Matt. So,
hey, before we move off of that, Brandon, just real quick tutorial, just so people have some perspective, because we talked about the committee, because this is selected by committee. So just a real quick talking points on who the committee is. So each region has its own 8-person committee, and those 8 people are 2 people from each conference. So there's equal representation for each conference, 2 people from each conference. It could be a sitting head coach, or it could be an administrator. Those people, among all the regional committees, also make up the national committee. There are 2 people from each regional committee that are also designated to the national committee. So 2 people from each conference on your regional committee, and then 2 people from each regional committee on your national committee. The national committee actually facilitates a lot of the administrative work that goes into hosting the championship. And it's really the regional committees that are largely responsible for the rankings and the selection process.
All right. Well, guys, let's go ahead and let's look at last week's pick'em results.
Let's do that. Good idea.
I think we can skip that segment. Nothing happened last week.
Otherwise known as the Matt Wiki bragging period.
Has anyone been perfect on a week?
No.
Okay, good. I just want to put that out there.
And and we can still make it so it's such that no one was perfect, with some nice editing skills, but
how long can we leave this up, by the way?
About that long. So okay,
Justin, you got 2 right. Did I see that? Justin, you might need a petition to get back in the deal here.
Let me go first and just pick opposite me. You're guaranteed to have a winning record then.
So, all right, let's go ahead and I'll bring that back up in spite of the fact that Matt gets great satisfaction out of it. Matt went 5-0, definitely got lucky on his commerce pick. I went 4-1, definitely got screwed over somehow. Chuck 3-2, Devin 3-2, Chris 3-2, Justin 2-3. So Justin deserving of the ridicule that we are sending his way.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring up this.
I'd make fun of me if that's any consolation.
No. We're going to do something new this week. All right. Justin's going to pick last every time, and we're going to see what happens. All right.
But by the way, I don't know if anybody caught the fact that my boy K. Ferg congratulated our coaching guest today after having picked against him. That was ballsy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
On Twitter, he did. And I was like, yeah.
You win them, you celebrate, you lose them, you got to own and eat it. I had to eat it.
When I spoke to him last night, he thought that was pretty humorous. But anyway.
All right, so let's look at this week's games, guys. Some good ones coming up. Nebraska Kearney at Northwest Missouri, Colorado Mesa at Western Colorado. We've already talked about that. Lenore Ryan and Wingate. A game that probably had more intrigue at the beginning of the season, had a little less intrigue a couple of weeks ago, but now has earned some intrigue again. West Georgia at Valdosta State, one of the great games in the Gulf South. It's going to be a great finish to the week, or to the season rather, for the Gulf South. And Ohio Dominican and Tiffin in a game that will have huge implications in the GMAC. So, guys, we are going to do the pick'em now. I've got the paper. I'm writing them down on the official paper right here. Let's go first. Nebraska Kearney at Northwest Missouri. I will go first, and I will pick Northwest Missouri. All right, Matt?
Yeah, I'm also going to go with the Bearcats. I think it's going to be a pretty good football game, and I think Kearney's been a little under the radar for a lot of people this year, and so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a nail biter. But I like Northwest.
Okay, and Chuck.
Yeah, I'm going to go Northwest. Similar feelings as Whip, but I'm going to go Northwest.
Okay, Chris.
Northwest offense scares me because when they're clicking, they're unstoppable. But they've been really pedestrian lately.
Okay,
so I'm going to go for the upset. I'm going to go with Kearney.
Awesome. Devin Albertson.
Piggybacking off Chris there, the more points scored in this game, the more it favors Nebraska Kearney. Their defense isn't great, but their offense is pretty darn good. But their thing on offense is running the football with TJ Davis and their stable of running backs. Usually something you can't do versus Northwest. They did it 2 years ago in 2019. They kind of bullied Northwest a bit and absolutely got that upset win over Northwest. I think Northwest wins this game, but they can't let Kearney make this a shootout because the Northwest is playing not their style of football. I think Northwest wins, but I'm not confident at all.
Okay. And, hold on, that was Devin. And then, Justin, you get to pick last.
Well, y'all are really not going to like my choice, but I'm going to take Northwest in this one. I think if
Chris likes it.
Hey, if Kearney wins this game, I'm sending Maryville to Justin, all right? I'm sending to Justin. They can take it out on him because he's the one who jinxed them, all right? Not me. Justin.
Yeah.
All right.
Nothing like the mush picking him right there. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
Let's go Colorado Mesa at Western Colorado. Matt, you go first, please.
Well, Coach Jackson's not on the call anymore, right?
Nope.
No, I'm just kidding. I think it's going to be a very good football game. I think Mesa's got a real challenge that they're going to need to get up for another game right after one of the most emotional wins in the history of their program. So I think that's a real challenge for them. I wouldn't be surprised if Western gets out early and gets a little bit of a lead, and then the athleticism and the fighting spirit that Mesa's got wins it out in the back half. I'll take Mesa.
Okay. All right, Chuck.
I've liked this Western Colorado team for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to go with them. Got a little bit of a scouting report actually from Coach Jackson that kind of reinforced some things that I was seeing too. So I'm going to go with Western, but now I follow Coach Jackson on Twitter, so I know he'll be able to call me out if they get a big.
And now he's gonna unfollow you.
K Ferg.
I just want to mention that I did choose Mesa when they played Pueblo, and that bit me. So I went the opposite,
Oh.
and it bit me again. So I don't know what to do. I am going to go with Mesa here. I'm going to stick with, they've got some real momentum here. I think the players are certainly believing in what Coach Jackson's trying to do. Western's going to be a tough out for sure. So it's going to be a good game. I look forward to watching it.
All right. And Devin, your turn.
Okay, so I picked against Mesa twice this year now, and they're 1-1 in those games. Coach Jackson's actually following me on Twitter as well now, and I followed him. I'm going to go with Coach Jackson this week, and he's going to win me over with the Twitter follows to give me Mesa in this one.
Coach Jackson's winning the room here, I think.
All right, Devin. All right, I will go with Mesa. They did me proud last week. Justin, you get to go last.
All right. So
no pressure, but it'd be great if you picked the home team, Justin.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know much about both teams, other than kind of something that Coach Jackson said earlier when we talked to him. The culture's winning ball games for them right now, and I think it was an emotional win this past week, and I think when you have a win like that, it's a program win, it's a staple win. But it's really, really hard to come back the next week and play at a high level again. So
I like the way you're
that
going
being
with this,
said,
that being said, it's like but.
Hold your
that being said, I'm going to take Western Colorado at home.
Yes.
Oh, he did. Threw a fake there. That was a play action pick right there. So, all right. Lenore Ryan at Wingate. Chuck, South Atlantic columnist, gets to go first.
Yeah, I think this is a really tough one. I mean, it always is. You have to fear a little bit that Lenore Ryan is kind of in Wingate's head a little bit because, Lenore Ryan's won the last several in this series. Most of them have been very close. The spring game was not. I think most people are probably looking towards Wingate. And, as the week goes on, I reserve the right to change my opinion on this. But right now,
I'm going
your pick. I'm going Lenore Ryan.
Whoa. You can't change it. I can't change it. You can't change it.
No. He's changing.
Not here in my column.
Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that.
Gotcha. All right. So go ahead, Chuck. Who are you going to pick?
I'm picking Lenore Ryan.
Okay. All right. Chris.
Yeah. You got two teams with two really good offenses. So they both kind of scared me. They both had these games that they just kind of came up really flat. And I think that Lenore Ryan's probably the right choice here. That's what I'm gonna go with. But nothing will surprise me here.
All right, Devin.
I'm going to Lenore Ryan as well. I think Chuck said they were playing a little bit of mind games in a history like this, and one team has the other team's number. I'll just go with Lenore Ryan on this one.
I think Lenore Ryan's the right pick. That's what I'm going to go with. Matt.
Right when I thought I was going to be hanging out, taking a chance and going on a limb here, I kind of lost some faith in Wingate when they lost to Barton, just because I thought a ranked team like that that can't happen.
Right.
And so I know Lenore Ryan is, they've beaten some bad teams the last few, but at the same time, it looks like their offense is going. I'm going to take Lenore Ryan in this one.
Okay. And Justin, you get to pick last again.
So I think this is going to be a good game. It's these games in the South Atlantic Conference are always tough. Lenore Ryan, I'm feeling. I guess I'm feeling them out every week now with the new coaching staff and their first season playing. Coach Reich down at Wingate, I think he's going to have Wingate ready to play. I think they know the magnitude of this game for looking ahead to the postseason. So I'm going to take Wingate at home.
I kind of like this when Justin picks last. There's a certain suspense.
Yeah, it's very fun. So, all right.
Well,
West Georgia at Valdosta State. What a game. All right. Who will go first this time? Chris, is that right? Chuck, you went first last time. Yeah. So Chris, go first, please.
Oh, what a rivalry game this is going to be. I'm going to go with Valdosta.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Man, I really want to go with West Georgia, but I respect what Valdosta has done on defense so much. I'm going to go with Valdosta. I can't pick just to be, just to pick somebody else. I'm going to pick Valdosta. Matt.
Strategic.
I echo exactly what you just said, Brandon. I've had Valdosta as the number one team, for the last few weeks, and I think they look like a machine. And I got to pick winners here if I'm going to go 5-0 again. So
if you're going to get lucky again, Chuck.
Yeah, I agree with it. I've had Valdosta ranked number one the last couple weeks, so I'm going with them.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Devin?
This is going to be a really good Saturday for the state of Georgia in general. I think I saw that on Saturday night. There's going to be a lot of game for the World Series with the Braves at home. The Atlanta soccer team's playing at home, I believe, as well. Hawks 76ers, Georgia, Florida, Georgia Tech, V-Tech, Georgia State, Georgia Southern in this game as well. There's a lot of really good games in the state of Georgia. I'm going with Valdosta State, though. As Matt said, I think they're probably the best team in the nation right now. I can't really pick against them at this point, especially at home.
All right. Devin picks Valdosta State. The most important question, who does the Gulf South columnist pick?
This is a big game in the Gulf. It's going to have huge playoff implications, I think. West Georgia loses this game. They're a two-loss team. They drop down to the two losses in the super region. That, and you never know how that's going to pan out. I think a one-loss Valdosta State team, I don't think it impacts them nearly as much with the loss. I think it's going to be a good game. Valdosta State right now is playing well defensively, and Ivory Durham has the offense playing well. But that being said, I'm going to take Valdosta. I'm going to take Valdosta in this one. But I think it'll be a pretty close game.
All right. One last game to pick. Ohio Dominican and Tiffin. And Chuck, the winner would still be in first place. The loser would essentially be in third place, I guess, because there's a three-way tie in the GMAC, or is it four-way tie?
There's a four-way tie right now going into this weekend. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start with Devin Albertson. Ohio Dominican or Tiffin?
I went back and forth in this game kind of the whole time. They both played UND. They both played them in a really close game and got wins there. Just kind of back and forth. I'm going to take Tiffin, just barely. The home field is giving a slight advantage there. I don't feel confident at all with it, but I'm taking Tiffin.
Okay. I will take Ohio Dominican. Matt.
Yeah, head coach of Tiffin, Chris Reisert, returns to his alma mater where he won the 2007 NAIA Player of the Year. And I think he's going to be pretty motivated to win a game there. I'm taking Tiffin.
Okay. Chuck.
I'm going Ohio Dominican.
All right.
I'm liking the way this is going right now.
Chris.
I'm going to go with Tiffin.
Dope.
All right. Justin, you're the last pick of the week.
Tiffin.
All right. All right. Great. Now, let's look at some user comments. And guys, remind me, Reed Jorgensen has a comment that I want to bring up, but it's at the very bottom. So don't let us stop in the show before I bring up his comment. It's about regional rankings, and it might help some others understand some stuff. So, okay. First question, is Albany State worthy of a top 3 seed? I think we found out that Inkblot thought they were, right? Isn't that where they were?
Yeah.
They're number 3 in Inkblot's calculation.
Yeah,
their defense is really, really good. I worry about their offense when you get in up against really tough competition in playoffs. I worry that their offense isn't quite good enough, but their defense is legit. Should win the SIAC going away, and they're definitely going to be solidly in the playoff field. And I think they are a top 3 or at least top 4 right now.
Okay. All right. Let me go through these. Sorry, guys. I know you guys can't see
What happened with
them.
Albany State at Savannah State? I thought it was a blowout. I thought it was supposed to be a good game last week.
We still don't know who won.
Both teams claimed to have lost that game on Saturday night.
Oh, that's funny.
We did resolve that, but yeah, very impressive win.
Okay, here's a question for you specifically, Chuck. You may have answered it, but answer it publicly. Would you place ASU higher than Bowie?
No, I would not. Better D2 win-loss percentage for Bowie, because remember, Bowie's an undefeated team against D2 competition, and I don't have the full OWP calculations, but I think that probably favors Bowie State as well.
Don't shake your head, Chris. We knew what your answer was going to be.
They bypassed Chris altogether on that question.
Yes, they did. Why?
Yeah, we know
Why
that
should we?
either.
Okay. Armo asked, we went over, do we know what time the regional rankings are being released tomorrow? It'll be at least 4 p.m. Central, so 5 p.m. Eastern. The first one is always later. If they do it more and more, it gets better and better each week. Okay. Well, Chuck, since you're a PSAC guy, this is a comment, but Lee Lucas Murphy says Gannon is going to win over Slippery Rock this week. They are on a roll. Is Lee Lucas dreaming, or is that a real possibility?
Well, I mean, given the sluggish performance last week, maybe not. The thing is that I think Slippery Rock is going to be a lot more invigorated this week because they got a huge assist from California beating IUP. That result really opens the door for Slippery Rock to still win the PSAC West and win the PSAC championship. So I think that they will probably learn from that really bad performance. And, hey, if Gannon's up for it, I hope they put in a great game, but I don't see an upset happening there.
Wasn't there a fair amount of Slippery Rock love in the chat a little bit earlier, or did I miss that?
That's some of it. Yeah, that was one of it, yeah.
And can Gannon be considered on a roll when they have like back-to-back 3-point wins versus teams with losing records? Is that considered a roll?
It is in Erie, Pennsylvania, apparently. So no worries. All right. So just a comment. Watching Sunday Night Football, didn't realize Trent Cannon was still in the league, plays for the Niners now. You saved Virginia State, but Shepard was trying to claim him a few weeks ago. Do you remember that, Chris?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Hands off.
All right. And Inkblot said Bowie State clinches with the win over Lincoln in the CIAA.
Not a given. Come on, Chris. It's not a given, right? Still got to play the game.
That's right. Anything can happen.
All right. Henderson. All right. Armo believes that Henderson was still hungover from the loss to Harding. Combine that with Tech showing up to play in a homecoming game, and you get the kind of game you did.
Were they, though, or is that just who Henderson is?
I don't know. I think
I don't know either. I mean, because Henderson still did their thing. They had over 600 yards of offense and 520 some passing yards. So they still made a lot of things happen. They just they couldn't get a stop when they really needed it on defense. So were they hungover, or is that just who they are?
Harding did what Bowie State did to Chowan. They took their soul.
So, Calvin, is Central Washington worthy of a top 7 seed? I think we already saw that they were going to get the seed. I think a more interesting question is, what do we really think about them?
The word "worthy" is kind of open to interpretation.
Right.
Are they according to the criteria? Yes. Do I have them beating the other teams in that same window of the regional rankings? I don't know if I do. They've split with teams that are in that mix, because obviously right now Midwestern State and Angelo are 4 and 5 respectively, and they've split with them. I'm not sure we know who Angelo is either. I mean, they're up and down too. So
that seems to be a lot of teams this year.
Well, especially in Super Region 4. I mean, as we talked about it, no one's going to be undefeated. There's going to be very few. Maybe you would even have one loss. So it's going to be its own little tournament right there. So
yeah, I kind of give them some breaks when it comes to strength of schedule and things like that, because it's such a challenge for them to even put a full schedule together. It's a tough existence out where they are to even find competition. So, and they will play anybody they can get. That's why they play those LSC teams. So, we try to be as impartial as possible. That's a program that I pull for, just because I want to see them stick around. I want to see them do well. It's not easy for them.
Well, I think it'll be curious to see how they play on the road against some greater competition because Angelo and Midwestern were at home for them. So I think that's going to be a question mark as well.
Yeah,
right.
good point.
All right. So, Joe, a comment. I do wish the NCAA regional rankings would include future opponents, wins and losses when doing them. I understand why they don't, but clearly the games already played are known. This is something we've harped on for a long time. It would make wins and losses easier to understand and the rankings easier to understand. Anybody disagree?
No.
I mean, you get there eventually. It's just, eventually all the games have to be played and all the games matter. I could go either way on this. I actually kind of think it makes sense if you want to look at a team's body of work to that point, you look at who they have played, not who they're going to play.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have people complain about how are you going to put all this and stuff for games that haven't even been played yet. Right. So I mean, it's going to get complaints either way, to be really honest. And I think they just landed on let's only look at games that have actually been played, not ones that are upcoming.
All right, I'm looking at some more.
That gives you a chance to reevaluate each week as well. So if there is a big game that happens, you can just take everything again, new as do with the top 10 rankings, and just kind of do it again. So I like it this way as well. I know it kind of stinks because we as humans are kind of impatient with this stuff, but we just got to be patient, take it 1 week at a time. So.
All right, looking for that comment. Is there a possibility that Newberry could get in over Wingate if they win their game against them in 2 weeks? So if Newberry beats Wingate, I think it's essentially what the question is.
Yeah, I mean they have to win their games. Wingate is going to give them a good boost in OWP, and actually Newberry already has a really good OWP as of right now. Their weighted OWP is really good. Mars Hill is a little bit of a problem for Newberry because Mars Hill has a head-to-head win. So if things kind of play out with them kind of being, on the fringe of being in and being out, they need Wingate to beat Mars Hill or need Tusculum to beat Mars Hill because that's a problem for them right now. But there's a couple teams that are still in play. I've been thinking the SAC might be a one-bid league this year. But that's not a given because there's still several teams that are in play. Newberry's still in play, Mars Hill, Wingate, and Lenore Ryan's not out of it yet either. If they win out and get to 8-2, any of those teams could be in if they win the last 3 games.
Yeah, and Wingate, they have Lenore Ryan, Newberry, and Mars Hill to end the year too, so they have a lot of work left to do to kind of finalize their resume as well.
Yep.
All right, and this is the comment that I wanted to talk about. He says he doesn't realize that 4 through 6, I guess it'd really be 5 through 7, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're actually considered unseeded at that point, right? So they can pair them with another host institution.
Right. So again, if you could only swap a 7 for a 7, it would basically make it impossible to move regions. Travel and expense are the most important factors in this. So, all right. Brad loves to see new teams play each other. Of course, in the Northern Sun, I never get to see any of these new teams in the regular season. There are a lot of us, especially we're in the center of the country, that feel your pain. Okay. And Inkblot says Newberry is 100% in if they win out.
Yep. So. Yeah, their strength of schedule is really good right now and should continue to trend upward.
Oh, hold on. It moved and displayed the wrong thing. Brandon wants to know if playing 10 D2 football games gets graded differently than playing 11 D2 games for the selection criteria.
Well, your overall D2 and in-region win-loss percentage is really one of the most important things. So 11-0 is better than 10-0.
Well, if it's a percentage, though, wouldn't that be identical?
It would be, yeah. You mean like 9-1 versus 10-1?
That would be slightly different. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what though? We've seen that in the past, and I haven't gotten the impression, and maybe others think differently. Mm-hmm. I haven't gotten the impression that the committee looks at that differently. I think that they look at that as a one-loss team versus a one-loss team.
That's the way I think they look at it.
And they look at they look at everything else to really decide it. That's just how I've seen it anyway.
I think there's definitely, yeah. Sorry, Chris.
I don't
definitely
know
they
if
don't
I
want to
agree with
penalize
that.
teams because it can be hard to schedule 11 games. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
I say I don't know if I agree with that. I know as a 10 game league, you kind of see where they kind of need that 11th game just to keep pace, it seems like. So maybe that might be a regional difference. But haven't seen it in Super Region 1 and Super Region 2 as a 10 game league. They kind of need that 11th game, I feel like.
And Inkblot just made a comment, when it's 10-1 versus 7-1, it does make a difference. I would
Right.
agree there. I would agree with that. So, Ian, old friend, Super Region 3 has traditionally been the toughest region over the past decade. Not so sure that's true this year. Who would, or what region would you guys think is the toughest region this year?
Gulf South region.
The Gulf South region.
Yeah,
CIAA.
Chris, point to that on your map, please.
This section of the forget the rest of all this.
I'd like to buy a vowel. No,
So the Gulf South region minus the SIAC, the SAC, and the CIAA apparently. So
I'm not completely sold on that. I think Super Region 3, when you look at, matter of fact, I'm staying with Super Region 3 actually on this. You got Ferris State, you got Grand Valley State, you got Northwest Missouri State, and you got Harding. I'll take that 4 up against any 4. That probably be, and I'm saying those are, in all likelihood, teams I think end up being hosts. What top 4 are better in another super region?
I don't think you can look at it from a top 4 perspective, though. Because
I do, because they're going to win, and then they keep moving, and that's the true strength of the deal.
But in Super Region 2, I mean, you see those lower seeds that can come out of nowhere and just absolutely take over games, and that's kind of what happened with West Florida on their run.
Well, let's look at that for a second. I want to bring that back up just to, because just look at if you take the 3 Gulf South teams, West Georgia, West Florida, and Valdosta, as 3 of them, and we're talking in Matt's 4-team criteria, all you'd have to do is add one other one, and I think Super Region 2 would be the strongest. But I don't know what the other team to add would be, which team that would be. I would lean towards maybe Bowie, but they've been the most consistent out of the rest. Anyway, it's all imagination anyway, but I don't know. But those 3 seem really tough.
Chuck, you're sitting there. You've got something, but you're not throwing it out there. What do you got?
Wheels are turning.
No, I kind of agree that Super Region 3 as a region probably is still the deepest. Now,
Good answer, Chuck. Good answer.
I think Chris was kind of making a point that
Yeah.
but you can't just look at like top 4 though, because like in Super Region 2, you're going to have like some GSC teams that are going to be 6 and 7 seeds because they lost a couple games. Like historically, you've had a couple SAC teams that were up in the top 3, top 4, a CIAA team that was undefeated up in the top 3, but down in 6 and 7, you've got like a West Florida and a West Alabama who make a hell of a lot of noise in the playoffs because those teams are really good. So, Chris, I don't know if that's kind of the point that you were making about, you got to look beyond just like the top 4, but so I think that's a really good point. But top to bottom, I do think Super Region 3 is probably still the deepest.
All right.
And
So,
one thing before we move on from that real quick, I just want to say I think the MIAA is a bit down this year. Maybe that's why I'm a little lower on the Super Region 3, because if the MIAA is looked at as a bit down, it kind of hurts that region a bit. Despite how good Ferris and Grand Valley are, I think Harding's improved. With the MIAA, I think just beating up on each other the next couple of weeks, I think it's going to lower the total strength of the region because the MIAA is not its usual tip-top self, I think.
Yeah, but the Grand Valley is as good as they've been in a long time.
Fair.
Yeah, I think they're strong even with only just Northwest. I mean, even if you included Kearney in somewhere on that 7, I think Kearney wouldn't be a bad 7.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So, Blazer Bobcat watching from Albany. It appears that the upset loss to Delta State yesterday has shortened the margin of error for West Alabama. I think anytime you lose that would apply to any team, that the margin of error is shortened. That just happens.
Well, they're ninth now, so they're on the outside looking in, according to Inkblot stuff. So,
right.
I mean, they went from being in the mix to not being in the mix, right?
And they got to play West Florida. I mean, that's still looming for them.
I want to address this question or this comment by Inkblot conceptually. All right, he says it's hard to say whether the MIAA is down when there's no non-conference games. And I understand why somebody who's very analytical with numbers and formulas and such would have that opinion. In my opinion, there's that might be the science of it, but there's also the art of picking and looking at this. And so when Devin is saying the MIAA is down, what he's saying is compared to itself, compared to the past, compared to the best in the country, he doesn't feel like Northwest or Kearney, or not Kearney, but I'm saying like Northwest and the second and the third and the fourth place MIAA team is as good relative to how it has been in the past. So yes, it's hard to make a comparison for playoff considerations, but it's basically Devin is saying if I went out and watched practice in 2016 and then I go out and watch practice in 2021, that same team might not be as good this year. Is that
the top teams in the MIAA aren't as the gap between them in the middle is not as big. I think the conference might be deeper because
there's parity but not separation, right?
2 through 10 might be better than what it has been in the past because Southern kind of jumped up a little better this year and stuff like that. But the top teams with Northwest and Kearney, they have some potentially fatal flaws to get to the playoffs with Northwest with their offense and then Kearney with their defense. That doesn't make them as strong as former MIAA playoff teams looking at it over the past 5 to 6 years, whatever it may be.
I just want to add in there that I think there is another element to consider, and that's injuries, because we seem to be seeing how injuries and teams having to go further into the depth chart. I mean, that happened with Northwest Missouri for one, and here's your fantasy football plug. But I have really struggled this year.
We've been waiting for it the whole show.
But I've struggled because you have seen some really good players go down to injuries this year. And they've had teams have had to scramble to plug in. So I think that's also making some teams come down to earth some too. I know, Devin, you had mentioned about Hohensee that, as a second string, and he got hurt. And I think when they played Washburn, right? So
he's been a couple weeks ago versus Western, and he's been banged up versus the Pitt and Washburn game. They won one, lost one. He looked a little better versus Northeastern State. They're not very good. So he looked a lot better there. And Braden Wright came back, the original starter this past week, got some reps as well. So we'll see what they look like in the Kearney game this week and see if Hohensee's a little healthier and if they use Braden Wright. Because he actually looked pretty good. I know it's Northeastern State, but he looked pretty good as well in his first action since week 1.
But that was like the same issue with Commerce, with Miklo Smalls being out. Bentley's starting running back is out for some time. But it's across the board. And I think that's an issue that I think we're seeing some teams, having to either plug and play or they're coming down to earth pretty quickly.
Well, Chris, you haven't pointed out how your team's doing in D2 Fantasy. Since we're at the 98-minute mark and we only kind of have our loyal supporters on the line anyway, why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, it's not going that well this year. But I've had some injuries and having to go find some additional players and really look hard at schedules and everything. So, I think I actually did take an L again this week, but I'm actually gearing up for the playoffs, right? Because that's really where it matters. So
there we go.
So it's kind of an alternative way of going about it, but it is going to be. I am going to be underdog this year in the playoffs.
See, Chris is trying to slide in like that 7th seed from the Gulf South and try to run through the playoffs, make a run here. I see what he's doing.
All right, guys. Well, I tell you what, I think that will do it for this week. Again, let me go through the rigmarole. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I put a little button on YouTube. You can subscribe by hitting the button that's in the lower right portion of your screen. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. You are our marketing team. We're not spending a gazillion dollars marketing ourselves, so we'd appreciate you spreading the word. I think we're like 25 Twitter followers from 19,000 or 20. I don't remember which it is, but it'd be great to have you spread the word about us. Remember to join us every week. We love doing this. We'd love to see you here. And as we leave, we'd like to again thanks everybody for supporting us, and we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.